I have the perfect story for you, but first, let me introduce myself. My name is Sarah, and I'm a college student in my early 20s. I love socializing with people, going out with my friends, and doing things that make me happy. But one day, my world was turned upside down by a person who tried to ruin my life. This is my story of how I got my revenge. It all started on a sunny day in June, when I met this girl named Lisa. We had a mutual friend and hit it off instantly. Lisa and I started hanging out and having a lot of fun. But little did I know that she was jealous of me and she would do anything to bring me down. One day, we were all at a party, and Lisa overheard me talking about my plans to travel to Europe the following month. She immediately got jealous and started saying how she wished she could afford to travel too. I tried to be sympathetic and suggested that she could save up money and travel someday too. But that wasn't enough for Lisa. She started spreading rumors about me, saying that I was a snob who thought I was better than everyone else because I was going to Europe. I couldn't believe it. I had never said anything like that, and I couldn't understand why Lisa was doing this to me. At first, I tried to ignore it, but the rumors kept spreading, and soon everyone in our social circle started to believe them. People started treating me differently, and I felt like an outcast. I knew I had to do something, so I confronted Lisa about the rumors. "Lisa, I need to talk to you. Why are you spreading these rumors about me?" I asked her. "What rumors?" Lisa said, pretending like she didn't know what I was talking about. "You know exactly what I'm talking about. You've been telling everyone that I'm a snob who thinks she's better than everyone else because I'm going to Europe," I said, feeling angry. "Oh, that. Well, it's true, isn't it?" Lisa said with a smug look on her face. "No, it's not true. I never said anything like that," I said, feeling frustrated. "Well, I heard you say it," Lisa said, shrugging her shoulders. "That's not true, Lisa, and you know it. Why are you doing this to me?" I said, feeling like I was at my wit's end. "I don't know." "I guess I just don't like you," Lisa said, with a smirk on her face. That's when I knew that Lisa was a toxic person who didn't deserve to be my friend. I decided to cut ties with her and focus on my own happiness. But Lisa wasn't done with me yet. A few weeks later, I received a text telling me that some purchases were made using my credit card. That was definitely not me. Then I received a message later that day from a mutual friend between me and Lisa that she, Lisa, was behind these shady purchases. Clearly, she had stolen my credit card information and had made several unauthorized purchases with it. I couldn't believe it. How could she do something so despicable? I immediately called my bank and reported the fraud, but I knew I had to take matters into my own hands, too. I texted Lisa back and told her that I knew what she had done and that she needed to return my money immediately. "You're crazy if you think I'm going to give you any money back. You should have been more careful with your credit card information," Lisa texted back. Of course, she wasn't plain and obvious telling me that so I don't take her text as evidence, but she made sure I got her message. I was furious. I couldn't believe that Lisa was trying to turn this around on me. That's when I decided to get my revenge. I went to the police and filed a report against Lisa for credit card fraud. I had saved all of our text messages as evidence, and I was sure that justice would be served. But Lisa was clever. She had used a virtual private network, VPN, to hide her location and identity while committing the crime. The police were unable to trace her, and the case was closed due to lack of evidence. But I didn't give up. I knew I had to get creative if I wanted to get my revenge. I started by spreading the word about what Lisa had done. I told all of our mutual friends and acquaintances about the fraud, warning them to be careful around her. I also posted about it on social media, making sure that everyone knew what kind of person Lisa really was. Lisa was furious. She started sending me threatening messages telling me to stop talking about her. But I didn't back down. I continued to spread the word, and soon Lisa's reputation was in shambles. People started avoiding her, and she became an outcast, just like I had been. One day, I was out shopping with my friends when Lisa spotted me. She stormed up to me, her face red with anger. "I told you to stop talking about me." She yelled at me. "I have every right to talk about what you did to me," I said calmly. "That's it. I've had enough of you," Lisa said, before trying to throw hands. But I was ready for her. I knew how to defend myself. I dodged her punch and then kicked her in the stomach. Lisa fell to the ground, gasping for breath. She tried to get up, but I kicked her in the shin, making her fall back down again. "I'm calling the police," Lisa said, tears streaming down her face. "Go ahead." "I have nothing to hide," I said, feeling triumphant. The police arrived, and Lisa tried to tell them that I had attacked her for no reason, but I had witnesses who had seen her try to punch me first. The police arrested Lisa for assault and battery, and she was charged with a misdemeanor. From that day on, Lisa disappeared from my life, and I never heard from her again. I had gotten my pro-revenge, and I had shown her that I wasn't someone she could mess with. I learned a valuable lesson about toxic people and the importance of standing up for yourself. And now, I'm stronger and more confident than ever before. I never thought that going to the store with my son could turn into a nightmare, but that's exactly what happened when Karen crossed our path. It all started when I was looking for some new earbuds for myself. My son, Jamie, was with me, and he was listening to his favorite music on his own set of earbuds. I was focused on trying to find the items on my list when Karen approached us. Karen was a middle-aged woman with a severe haircut and a scowl that could make anyone uncomfortable. She was accompanied by her son, who looked to be around Jamie's age. I didn't pay them much attention until Karen spoke to me. "Excuse me, young lady, can you give my son your son's earbuds? He forgot his at home, and he really wants to listen to some music." I was taken aback. I had never been approached like this before. I didn't know what to say, so I simply said, "I'm sorry, but my son doesn't want to give his earbuds away." Karen's face immediately twisted into a scowl. "Excuse me? My son needs those earbuds, and your son is being selfish by not giving them to him. You should teach him better manners." I could feel my blood pressure rising. How dare this woman talk to me like that? I was about to say something back to her when Jamie stepped forward. "I don't want to give my earbuds away," he said. Karen's eyes widened in shock, and she lunged forward, trying to grab the earbuds from Jamie's ears. I quickly stepped between them, trying to defuse the situation. "Please, leave us alone," I said, trying to sound calm. Karen was having none of it. Before I could react, she grabbed Jamie by the waist, lifted him up, and started shaking him violently. "Give me those earbuds, you little brat!" she screamed. I could see the fear in Jamie's eyes, and I knew I had to act fast. I quickly grabbed Karen's arm and tried to pull her away from Jamie, but she was surprisingly strong. "Let go of me," she screeched, continuing to shake my son. That's when I saw an opening. Karen was so focused on getting the earbuds from Jamie that she didn't see me coming. I grabbed the half-full shopping cart that was sitting nearby and rammed it into her, sending her tumbling to the ground. The commotion caught the attention of a nearby security guard who quickly approached us. "What's going on here?" he asked, looking between Karen and me. She tried to take my son's earbuds and assaulted him. Karen was still on the ground, clutching her arm and wailing. The security guard quickly assessed the situation and called the police. When the police arrived, Karen was still shouting and causing a scene. She was demanding that I be arrested for assaulting her, while Jamie clung to me, looking frightened and upset. I explained to the police what had happened, and they listened patiently to my side of the story. One of the officers went over to Karen and tried to calm her down, but she was having none of it. She continued to shout and swear, insisting that she was in the right and that we were all out to get her. The other officer took my statement and then asked Karen for her side of the story. She told him that Jamie had refused to give her son his earbuds and that she had tried to take them from him because she believed her son had a right to use them. The officer listened to her and then asked her why she had lifted Jamie in the air and shaken him. Karen became defensive, insisting that she had only done it to get his attention and make him hand over the earbuds. The officer then asked Karen to come with him so that he could take her statement in private. Karen refused, insisting that she wasn't going anywhere until I was arrested for assault. At that point, the other officer stepped in and told Karen that she had to come with them, whether she liked it or not. Karen continued to resist, but the officers were firm and eventually she relented and went with them. I remember feeling relieved when they finally took her away. Jamie and I hugged each other, both of us still a bit shaken up from the incident. But we were also grateful that it was over and that Karen had been held accountable for her actions. A few days later, I received a call from the police informing me that Karen had been charged with assault and disturbing the peace. Apparently, she had continued to cause a scene even after they took her to the station, and they had no choice but to press charges. I wasn't surprised to hear that given her entitled behavior in the store, but it was still a bit unsettling to think that someone could behave so recklessly and without regard for others. A few weeks later, I received another call from the police, informing me that Karen had pled guilty to the charges and had been sentenced to some jail time and a fine. I remember feeling a sense of satisfaction, but also a bit of sadness that it had come to this. Anyways, my boy is okay. I'm okay. And that's what really matters. I woke up one morning to a knock on my door. I groggily stumbled out of bed, rubbed my eyes, and answered the door. To my surprise, I was greeted by a group of people holding clipboards and wearing matching polo shirts. "Good morning, ma'am. We are from the Homeowners Association," said the leader of the group, a middle-aged woman with a stern expression. "We've received complaints about your yard, and we need to have a word with you." My heart sank. I had only moved into the neighborhood a few months ago, and I was already getting in trouble with the HOA. I knew they could be strict, but I didn't expect them to come knocking on my door before I even finished my morning coffee. Okay, come on in," I said, opening the door wider and gesturing for them to enter. The group filed into my living room and took a seat on my couch. The leader of the group introduced herself as Karen, fake name, and proceeded to pull out a stack of papers from her clipboard. "Miss Johnson, we have received several complaints about your front yard. It seems you haven't been following the guidelines outlined in our community bylaws," Karen said, her tone accusatory. "I'm sorry. I didn't know there were specific guidelines for my yard," I said, feeling embarrassed. "Well, there are, and we expect our residents to follow them," Karen said, before launching into a long list of rules and regulations for my yard, from the type of grass I was allowed to plant to the height of my hedges. As she spoke, I couldn't help but feel like I was being scolded like a child. I had always been a free spirit, and the idea of being told what to do with my own property made me feel trapped. "I understand the rules, but I feel like some of them are a bit excessive," I said, trying to reason with her. "I'm sorry you feel that way, Ms. Johnson. But these rules are in place to ensure the aesthetic integrity of our community," Karen said, not budging an inch. I could tell this conversation wasn't going to go anywhere, so I thanked them for their time and showed them out. As I closed the door, I let out a deep sigh. I knew I had to do something about my yard, but I didn't want to conform to the HOA's strict guidelines. I had always been a bit of a rebel. Growing up, I was the type of kid who would dye her hair bright pink and wear mismatched clothes just to stand out. My parents were always supportive of my individuality, and they encouraged me to express myself however I wanted. But after my parents passed away when I was 25, I felt lost. They had been my rock, and without them I didn't know how to be myself. I bounced around from job to job, never really finding my passion. It wasn't until I moved to this neighborhood that I felt like I could start fresh. As I looked out at my yard, I knew I had a decision to make. I could either conform to the HOA's rules and regulations, or I could stand up for my individuality and do something that felt true to myself. A few weeks went by, and I found myself spending every spare moment working on my yard. I planted wildflowers and painted my mailbox bright purple. I even hung a homemade wind chime made out of old spoons and forks on my porch. As I was watering my plants one day, Karen from the HOA came by for an impromptu inspection. She looked around, her eyes scanning every inch of my yard. I could tell she was disapproving of my wild, eclectic style, but I didn't let it bother me. I was proud of my yard, and I wasn't going to let anyone tell me how to express myself. "Miss Johnson, I'm afraid your yard is still not up to par with our community standards," Karen said, her tone condescending. I took a deep breath before responding. "I understand your concerns, Karen, but I believe that everyone should have the freedom to express themselves, even if it doesn't fit into a strict set of guidelines." Karen scoffed. "Well, that may be true, but not in this community. We have a certain standard to uphold, and we can't have residents flaunting the rules." I could feel my blood boiling. Who was she to tell me how to live my life? I knew I had to stand up for myself. "Karen, I appreciate your position, but I am not willing to sacrifice my individuality for the sake of conformity. I am willing to work with the HOA to find a compromise that works for everyone, but I will not change who I am to fit into a mold," I said firmly. Karen looked taken aback, clearly not used to residents pushing back against the HOA's authority. She took a moment to compose herself before responding. "Very well, Mrs. Johnson. We will take your request into consideration, but I can't make any promises," Karen said before turning and walking away. I stood there for a moment, feeling a mix of pride and anxiety. I had stood up for myself, but I didn't know how the HOA would react. Over the next few weeks, I waited anxiously for the HOA's response. I continued to work on my yard, adding more flowers and even putting up a small birdhouse. I felt like I was creating a space that reflected who I was, and I wasn't willing to give that up. One day, I received a letter from the HOA. I hesitated before opening it, unsure of what it would say, but when I read the contents, I felt a rush of relief and joy. The letter stated that the HOA had reviewed my request and had decided to make an exception for my yard. They acknowledged that while my yard didn't fit into their strict guidelines, it added to the community's diversity and character. I couldn't believe it. I had stood up for myself and it had paid off. I felt like I could finally breathe, knowing that I could be myself in my own home. As I sat in my yard, taking in the beauty of my wildflowers and the sound of my homemade wind chime, I felt like I had finally found my place in the world. I knew that I would always be a bit of a rebel, but that was okay. I had learned that it was possible to be true to myself while still being part of a community. From that day on, I continued to live in my own unique way, but I also found ways to connect with my neighbors. I hosted a block party, and everyone loved my homemade guacamole. I even joined the HOA's gardening club, where I shared my love of wildflowers with others. I realized that even though I had once felt like an outsider in this community, I had found a way to make it my own. And that was something worth celebrating.